You know that feeling, right? When you just need a boost. Maybe it's that classic afternoon slump or the ache after a workout. What if there was a way to energize your body, like at its most fundamental level, not with a supplement or a shot, but with something as simple, as ubiquitous as light? Today we're doing a fascinating deep dive into how red and near-infrared light interact with the very powerhouses of your cells, your mitochondria.
It's a really compelling idea, isn't it? We'll explore the underlying science, the mechanisms involved, and some pretty surprising effects this type of light has on cellular health. And that impacts, well, basically everything from energy levels to inflammation, recovery, the work.
Absolutely. And hey, before we jump right in, we really want to give a special shout out to RedLightTherapy.Rehab. They actually initiated this comprehensive review and definitely sparked our curiosity on this incredibly important topic. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start right at the foundation. Mitochondria. We hear that word thrown around a lot, especially in health discussions. For our listeners who probably have some familiarity, what's maybe the one crucial thing they might not fully realize about these cellular powerhouses, and why should their health be such a priority?
That's a great question. I think the crucial thing is just how central they are. They truly are the energy factories. For almost every single cell, their number one job, producing adenosine triphosphate or ATP, and you should think of ATP as like the universal energy currency for the body. Literally every process, muscle contraction, brain function, immune response, you name it, needs ATP. So if your mitochondria aren't working efficiently, well, nothing else can work optimally either. It's that fundamental.
Wow. Okay. That's a huge amount of responsibility for something microscopic just humming away inside us. But you mentioned their health can decline. What does that actually look like? What happens then? And how might we, feel that in our daily lives?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a natural part of aging, but it can also be sped up by, well, modern life. Stressors, whether they're environmental toxins, intense physical exertion, even chronic emotional stress, these things can cause mitochondrial function to decline. And when those power plants slow down, you feel it directly. Things like chronic fatigue, maybe slower healing from an injury, more inflammation. It can even be a contributing factor to many age-related diseases. So yeah, supporting them is directly linked to better energy, better recovery, better resilience overall.
Okay, got it. Sluggish mitochondria equals sluggishness. But how does something seemingly so simple, just light, actually connect with these microscopic engines to fix the problem? This is where it gets really interesting.
It really is fascinating stuff. This is the whole idea behind the photochemical effect of low-level light therapy, or PBM. Now, unlike other medical lasers people might know, PBM isn't about heat. It's not about cutting or ablating tissue. It's a much gentler light absorption that causes a chemical change inside the cell. It's actually conceptually similar to photosynthesis in plants,
Yeah.
converting light energy into chemical energy. And the specific light we're talking about is typically in the red to near infrared part of the spectrum, usually around 600 to 1100 nanometers.
Okay, why those specific wavelengths? Is there something special about that particular slice of the light spectrum?
There is, yeah, and it's absolutely critical for how it works. Those wavelengths fall within what scientists call the optical window of biological tissue. This window is roughly 650 to 1200 nanometers. And within that range, light can penetrate deepest into our tissues. Why? Because it largely bypasses absorption by the main things that usually soak up light near the surface, stuff like hemoglobin in your blood or melanin in your skin. It also avoids the strong water absorption you get at higher infrared wavelengths. So this specific range lets the light actually reach those deeper cellular structures like the mitochondria where it needs to go.
Right. Okay. So it's like finding the perfect key to unlock the door deep inside the tissue. Now, let's zoom in even further. Once this light gets into the cell, what's the actual interaction? What's the conversation happening between the light and the mitochondria?
Okay, so the key player here seems to be a very specific molecule inside the mitochondria. It's part of the electron transport chain, which is central to energy production. It's called cytochrome spite oxidase, or COX for short. And the research strongly points to COX being the primary photoacceptor, the molecule that actually absorbs this red and near infrared light. When COX absorbs these light particles, these photons, it kicks off a whole cascade of beneficial biochemical events.
A cascade. Okay, what's the first domino to fall? What happens right after COX absorbs the light?
The first and probably most significant thing is the release of nitric oxide, NO. Now, see, in cells that are stressed or maybe don't have enough oxygen, what we call hypoxic cells, nitric oxide can actually bind to COX. And when it binds there, it acts like a brake. It inhibits the enzyme, slowing down cellular respiration, slowing down energy production. But when red light hits it,
Ah, the light interferes.
exactly, the light photo-dissociates that nitric oxide.
Photo-dissociates. It sounds technical. Break that down a bit. Like light pushing something away.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Think of nitric oxide like a piece of sticky tape gumming up a crucial part of the mitochondrial engine. When the red light photon hits that NO molecule stuck on COX, it essentially zaps it, makes it pop off, and this instantly frees up that binding site. Oxygen can jump back on, cellular respiration gets restored almost immediately, and crucially, ATP synthesis energy production ramps up significantly. So yeah, in simple terms, red light tells your mitochondria, okay, get back to work. It's almost like flipping an on switch for energy.
That is genuinely incredible. So light isn't just passively shining, it's actively intervening and kickstarting the fundamental energy process, like a biological jumpstart. Okay, so we've got more ATP, the cellular power plants are humming again. What else happens? What are the downstream effects, the ripple effects in the cell and the tissue?
Right, the effects definitely ripple outwards. It's not just about ATP. For instance, these low levels of red light also induce a brief, controlled burst of something called reactive oxygen species, or ROS.
Okay, hold on. ROS, reactive oxygen species. That usually sounds bad, right? Like free radicals. Why would a burst of those be good here? Isn't that counterintuitive?
It does sound counterintuitive. That's a really sharp point. And it highlights a key nuance. While high levels of ROS are definitely harmful, at these specific low controlled levels generated by PBM, they actually act as vital signaling molecules. Think of it less like a destructive fire and more like a tiny controlled spark that sets off a beneficial alarm system in the cell. These ROS can activate certain pathways, like redox-sensitive transcription factors, basically messengers, which then tell your genes to start producing protective compounds, antioxidants, things that help the cell defend and repair itself. And what's really interesting is that in cells already under oxidative stress, PBM has actually been shown to lower overall ROS levels and boost the cell's own antioxidant defenses. So it's about balance and signaling, not damage.
Ah, I see. So it's not just making energy, it's also about tuning up the cell's communication and defense systems, making it more resilient, like a cellular software update.
Precisely. A great analogy. And beyond the COX interaction, the light can also trigger the release of nitric oxide from other stores within the cell. This contributes to increased vasodilation, basically, relaxing blood vessels and improving blood flow to the treated area. Then, at the cellular level, PBM at these appropriate low doses does things like prevent programmed cell death, apoptosis. It can also improve cell proliferation, migration, adhesion, basically helping cells like fibroblasts and keratinocytes, crucial for wound healing, move around and stick where they need to be. It can even boost the release of growth factors, which are like little instruction manuals for repair and regeneration.
Okay, so improved blood flow, better cell function, more healing signals. What about the bigger picture? Tissues, organs, the whole system.
Well, on that tissue level, we see things like enhanced formation of new blood vessels, neovascularization, and angiogenesis. More plumbing for repair. We see increased collagen synthesis, which is obviously vital for wound healing, skin health, connective tissue. Clinically, this translates into PBM, helping to reduce pain, inflammation, and swelling from injuries or chronic conditions like arthritis. And studies show benefits not just superficially, but in healing deeper stuff too. Nerves, tendons, cartilage, even bone and internal organs. It's also being seriously explored for helping mitigate damage after really serious events like strokes, traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries. It's incredibly versatile.
This all sounds almost too good to be true, which usually means there's a catch, right? Can you just soak yourself in red light 247 for maximum benefit? Or is this the too much of a good thing situation? Feels like a twist coming.
You absolutely nailed it. That brings us to one of the most fascinating and honestly most crucial aspects of PBM, the biphasic dose response. This phenomenon is often described by something called the Arndt-Schultz law.
The Arndt-Schultz law. Okay. Sounds like required reading for med school, but very relevant now. What does it tell us in the context of light therapy?
Right. It's an old principle from pharmacology, actually from the late 1800s, but it fits light therapy perfectly. Basically, it states that weak stimuli can slightly accelerate biological activity, stronger stimuli raise it further, but then you hit a peak. And beyond that peak, even stronger stimuli start to suppress the activity and can eventually become inhibitory or even harmful. So, applied to PBM, it means low optimal levels of light have stimulating beneficial effects, but higher excessive levels can actually shut down those benefits or worse, become detrimental.
Wow. So more isn't just not better, it can actually be worse.
Yeah.
That really goes against intuition, doesn't it? You'd think more light equals more good stuff, like sunshine.
Exactly. It feels counterintuitive, but the research shows this again and again. There's no simple linear relationship. The dose matters immensely. That's the total energy delivered. But how it's delivered also matters: the power density, irradiance, and the time. You can't just blast it with high power for a short time and expect the same result as low power for a longer time, even if the total energy dose is the same. The biology responds differently. There's a sweet spot.
Okay, why does that happen? What are the theories behind this sweet spot? Why does too much light flip the switch from beneficial to potentially harmful?
There are a few main ideas floating around. One goes back to those reactive oxygen species, ROS, we talked about. Remember, low levels are good signals, but if you hit the cell with too much light, you might generate excessively high concentrations of ROS. And at those high levels, they do become harmful, cytotoxic, damaging the cell. Another idea involves nitric oxide again. It's sometimes called the Janus molecule, two-faced. Low doses are protective, promoting blood flow. High doses in some contexts can be damaging. And finally, some research suggests that really high doses might activate completely different cellular pathways, ones that are inherently damaging or lead to programmed cell death, apoptosis, essentially overwhelming any potential benefits.
So the takeaway for anyone using or considering these devices is pay really close attention to the recommended dosages and protocols. Don't just wing it.
Absolutely. That's paramount. The research consistently reinforces don't overdo it. More isn't always better. Precision is key for both effectiveness and safety.
Okay, given all these amazing cellular and systemic effects, where is this research heading? What are some of the most exciting real-world applications that are popping up?
One area generating a ton of excitement is brain photobiomodulation therapy, brain PBM. It's really emerging as a novel, non-invasive approach for a whole range of neurological and even psychological conditions. The idea is that light delivered through the skull transcranially can enhance the metabolic function of neurons, stimulate anti-inflammatory responses, reduce oxidative stress, protect against cell death, and even promote the creation of new neurons and connections, neurogenesis and synaptogenesis.
That sounds revolutionary, frankly.
Sure.
But translating that promise, especially from animal models, into reliable human treatments, what are the big challenges there?
That is the critical question. While the preclinical data and now growing clinical evidence looks very promising for things like dementia, Parkinson's, stroke recovery, TBI, even depression, a major hurdle is standardizing effective treatment protocols for humans. We need more large-scale, placebo-controlled human trials. We need to nail down the optimal wavelengths, dosages, frequencies, treatment durations for specific conditions and diverse groups of people. How deep does the light need to go? What spots on the head? Lots to figure out. But that said, in the animal models, the consistency is remarkable. PBM consistently reduces inflammation markers in the brain. It calms down the brain's immune cells, the microglia, shifting them from an inflamed, damaging state to a protective, healing one. This is seen in models of TBI, aging brains. It's quite compelling. And importantly, these animal studies haven't reported adverse effects on the brain tissue itself.
Right. It really sounds like it's trying to address the underlying cellular dysfunction and inflammation at the root, rather than just managing symptoms. Especially in the brain, that's huge.
That's exactly the potential researchers are excited about. The studies consistently show this pattern: reduced pro-inflammatory signals, increased anti-inflammatory ones. It's tackling that core imbalance seen in so many neurological and psychiatric diseases.
And just stepping back from the brain for a second, what other general benefits are commonly reported or studied with red light therapy?
Oh, it's quite a range. People often report things like increased overall energy levels, better stamina, definitely faster muscle recovery after exercise is a big one. Improved cognitive clarity gets attention a lot too. And then there's anecdotal reports and studies looking at reduced pain, particularly chronic pain, and improvements in skin health, texture, tone, wound healing. It's really versatile. Even NASA looked into it way back initially for astronauts to help maintain muscle and bone mass in zero gravity. That tells you something about its fundamental biological effects.
Fascinating. So wrapping this up, what does this all point towards for the future?
Well, the continued progress in understanding the exact molecular and cellular nuts and bolts of PBM is really exciting. Yes, we absolutely need more rigorous, large-scale human trials to solidify the findings from animal research and smaller studies. But that core principle of LLAT hormesis, the idea that low levels of light stress are good, but high levels are bad, that biphasic dose response that's going to remain absolutely central to using this safely and effectively.
So after this deep dive, what's the big idea that resonates with you? For me, maybe it's this thought. Light doesn't just let us see the world. Maybe it can actively heal and energize us right down at the cellular level. Think about it. What if optimizing our cellular power using specific wavelengths of light is a fundamental key to unlocking better health, more resilience, moving beyond just treating symptoms to actually enhancing the very engine of life itself? Could light therapy become as common as taking a vitamin someday? This deep dive has certainly shed, well, a lot of light on a powerful natural tool for health. We definitely encourage you, our listener, to explore this topic further, see what insights you uncover.